right, welcome back, everybody. Let's take a look and see. Yep, everyone, folks are rolling in. Yay! You can see Mary Schiff. Virginia Butler is here. William's back. There's Toddy. Excellent. All right, yeah, I'm seeing the room fill up, and then yes. Thanks for posting in the chat, William. All right, so what are we on? Our fourth session of the day? Our third session? I can't even remember anymore. It's just been so incredible so far. I am really honored to have Russell Sweep actually speaking at a TLDC event here today. I met Russell face to face for the first time last week in Las Vegas, and it was great actually getting to meet you there, Russell. We've done, Russell has kind enough to invite me on his podcast. So we have done a podcast episode in the past, and Russell has messaged me like before that. You have come in and experienced TLDC events in the past. So just love the fact that that you're participating and that you're here with us for this really specific event that isn't for everybody, but it's for us, everyone that's here attending. So I'm going to let Russell do his bio. I just want to say, really glad, Russell, I get to meet you and that you're spending some time with us. And with that, I'm going to hide myself from the screen and let you take it away.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome. I'm super excited to be here. I really appreciate this event, and this topic is near and dear to my heart. I don't always get a chance to pull up the hat. I feel like this is the time to do it. So first and foremost, I wanted to share Google Drive. It's got these slides. It has a Word document that has all the notes and the resources that I'm going to be referring to. And then there's also a PDF file of it's a character creation sheet for D&D, but I've converted it into a note section. So you can actually use that throughout the rest of these sessions if you're attending tomorrow as well, in order to write down what session you're at and some notes, and then a checklist at the bottom. So it could be super useful if you want to apply that towards this. So this particular topic is really important to me because I feel like role play is very misunderstood, especially in the workplace setting. A lot of people get very uneasy when we talk about role play because they think that they have to instantly become actors on stage, or they think other people are judging them. And one of the ways that I think we can move past that is by preparing a lot of our learners, giving them the tools and the resources so that they feel ready to role play and they know the with them. What's in it for me? What are they going to get out of this? If they're going to go on stage and potentially feel foolish, we want them to feel like they are supported. We want them to feel like that's not the case, that they're learning, but we also want them to feel like they got something out of it. So I wanted to draw the parallels between role play at work and role play in D&D. I think this is incredibly important because Dungeons and Dragons does this very well. So we're going to be going into both of those, and I'll offer scenarios for both a D&D session and a workplace scenario that we're going to be going into. For reference, I'm currently working on a leadership development training specific about workplace conflict. So we're going to be using that scenario in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of role play. But there's plenty of other opportunities to practice it at your work, and we're going to be going through a lot of those together. Okay. So who am I and why should you listen to me? So I have been a college professor for about 6 years in Southern California, where I taught psychology courses, and we used role play a lot. We investigated the social psychology elements behind it, the social skills that develop during role play, the empathy that we develop, and we really dived deeper into how effective it can be. I've also been a dungeon master for about 4 years. So I've been running one campaign right now that has consecutively been going for 3 years. That's a big commitment, but I love it. I am a big fan of my group, and we love just kind of engaging and telling these stories together. And then the third is that I am a manager for Goodwill Industries International on their learning and development team. And like I had alluded to earlier, I'm currently developing leadership development training that focuses on using role play as a catalyst to get people to practice difficult scenarios. So we're going to be going through that together and describing a little bit about how it can be effective. Um, this grainy picture right here was actually taken 10 years ago when I was on my first date with my now wife. We went to a Ren fair together. Do you want to guess where my wife is in this picture? She is not the Minotaur. She's actually the person holding the camera. So I don't even have a picture of me and my wife in our first meeting together, our first date. I have this picture with me and this Minotaur. And so my nerdum goes pretty intense sometimes. Okay. So role play. I wanted to discuss what is role play and why is it relevant in the workplace. A lot of people feel that role play is synonymous with stage acting, that people need to take on a specific character role and they need to do it well. They need to do voice acting or they need to like really embrace these emotions. And I think that that creates kind of an intimidation factor for a lot of people. If you ever watch Dungeons and Dragons TV shows like Critical Role, they are trained voice actors, they are professionals. And to hold ourselves to that standard is unrealistic. I feel like we need to understand that that isn't the only way to be effective in role play. And how we get something out of it is really relating towards the skills that we're developing and how we relate it towards the workplace that we're in. Dungeons and Dragons has this concept called theater of the mind. And since we're on this exact same idea of, being on stage, really what we're doing is we're creating scenarios in our mind that we can then practice and we can practice in a safe environment. So role play can really illustrate that. It can create opportunities for you to practice those skills and then see the effect of them, the consequences of those actions. And that's a huge part of what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. So here are a lot of different skills that you can develop and you can practice in your different situations in role play. And I feel like as we go on, we're going to start talking about different fields that really benefit from this. Having difficult conversations or practicing something that people maybe need to be a little faster or more adept at bringing out some knowledge is a great way to incorporate role play into your workplace. Um, but first and foremost, I feel like role play goes hand in hand with storytelling. I wasn't able to attend Dawn's session, but I read some of the comments and people were talking about that she had mentioned storytelling and how important that is in Dungeons and Dragons. Um, the a quote that I'd love to read to you is that Dungeons and Dragons role playing game is about storytelling. Those are the very first words that are in the player's handbook of 5th edition. So it is crucial and a huge learning tool that is implemented directly into the foundation of what Dungeons and Dragons is. On top of that, we also have the implementations of what happens at the table and what happens in our mind. There are several studies that if you go into that Google Drive, you'll be able to find a lot of those resources that I referenced towards that really describe the mental health benefits of engaging in role play and engaging in tabletop RPGs. They focus a lot on the social psychology elements that we can relate towards different facets of our life. The idea that our mental health skills are developing so that we can work on things like relationship maintenance and communication skills, that we can focus on mitigating things like social anxiety that might prevent us from moving forward with these difficult topics, improving social skills related towards communication in just everyday speech, and then reducing the stress that's related towards a lot of the things that we often come across. It gives us an opportunity to practice it in the same way that self-talk does. The ability to create that narrative in your mind so that you'll be better prepared when something comes up. You can kind of reach towards those scenarios that you've already worked on. There are two studies that I allude to here, the Myers-Au and Tamir study focuses a lot on when we take on a specific role in scenarios, we tend to develop those skills a lot better and a lot faster. And so that practice in role play actually cements a lot of those skills into our learning, and a lot more than just hearing someone talk about it. It gives you an opportunity to practice that and develop it. The second study here by the NIH focuses a lot about the mental health benefits, specifically after COVID, when people started reaching a lot more towards role playing games in order to have a connection with others. I feel like that was a huge catalyst towards the success of D&D in our culture. And it's something that really illustrates our desire to connect with people in different ways. Role play often provides that opportunity for us. So, where can we use role play at work? I would love if everyone else is able to throw into the chat different situations at work that you think role play could be very beneficial for you. Because as we go throughout this, we're going to be alluding towards a lot of these different teaching opportunities. So, mock interviews with customers. Yeah, customer service is a great one, Jason. I love that. Sales, says Kim. Excellent. Yes. Sales and being able to be charismatic with customers, being able to illustrate something in a way that they need it, and understanding what is that with them for them. Ethical dilemmas, says Nick. That's a really great one, too. The idea of difficult conversations and being able to broach those in an appropriate manner. Conflict resolution, and case scenarios. Yeah, I'm loving all these. These are really great. Some of the ones that maybe weren't as mentioned are things like emergency response, knowing what to do in a situation when you have to, like, if there's an active shooter, or if there's a situation where someone needs a defibrillator. Yeah, I believe that's what it's called, defibrillator. So a lot of these, yep, human interactions in healthcare. And that's a great point too, Jennifer, is that this, when we talk about role play is about developing these human skills. It's about interacting with others and being able to utilize this chance to practice it in a risk-free environment. Even though it can sometimes be foreboding for people to, jump in that role play environment, this is a risk-free situation. It provides an opportunity for us to practice, and then also for us to gain feedback. And that is incredibly important. We're going to talk about that later on too, the assessment value for role play. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, these are really great situations all around. Okay. So as we go through this, we're going to have different scenarios that are all happening at the same time. But to begin with, we're going to start in a tavern. I feel like this is crucial for anyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons. It is the hallmark way to start any campaign. You start in a tavern. Taverns are interesting because they offer so many controlled variables that you, as the dungeon master or the facilitator, can then bring out for people to interact with. But similarly towards roleplay, it is a safe environment. You usually don't have anything blowing up inside the tavern. So this is that's a good point, Jennifer. This is really great for us to be able to focus in on getting comfortable in a role play setting. So one of the jobs of you as the dungeon master is to invoke a lot of the senses of your players. So for instance, you smell cooked meats that waft through the air and hear beer spilling on the ground. Coins jangle as they come out of a bag and dribble onto a surface, and joyous laughter and singing can be heard throughout the air. Those are all descriptive phrases that really invoke the senses of a person. And while that can be super useful for a DM, when you talk about facilitating should be more about facts and emotions. Those are the two things that you're really reaching for. And in a couple more slides, we're going to be talking more about the importance of those two. because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand how others interact with us. And senses are good for creating a context, but the emotions and the facts related towards what we say is going to have more of an impact on a business outcome or a learning objective. So, first and foremost, we're going to jump into our first scenario here. I'm going to make this poll published. Okay. So, yep. All right. Can everyone see that? Give me like a thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, cool. All right. So what we're going to do here is we've got three different scenarios. We are inside this tavern. We can either go up and speak to the bartender. We can go to the wanted posters and see what are the values of these for bounty hunters, or we could go to the singer who seems to be captivating a lot of people but seems to be a little mischievous in the corner. So based upon that, we want to see, where do we want to go? So we got a 50-50 right now with bartender and wanted posters. Nobody wants to go to the singer. Oh, we got some singers. Okay. All right. So I'll give this another maybe like 10 seconds, and then we're going to be moving forward with our scenario here. All right. So I'm going to hide this. I believe I can just close this one. Will that work? Poll has been closed. And then hide poll from stage. Excellent. All right. So our decision based on that is to go speak to the bartender. That's going to be where we're headed. And for that one, we're going to keep that in mind for our first scenario, or first main point here for this presentation. When you create role play opportunities, you want to focus in on the skills that you're going to be providing towards the people that you're training. One way to do that is you need to create a scenario. Scenarios are incredibly important because they help us concentrate on the key features, the important information that is right in front of us, and they embed us into that story. Those key features are things like context, character, and conflict. You want to make sure that you flesh these out with enough detail, not so overwhelmingly so, but enough detail that someone knows where and when they are, who are the key players, and what is the conflict that I'm now dealing with. A lot of these scenarios are going to be talking about conflict because we want to create resolution. We want to eventually invoke a lot of those lessons and a lot of those skills through the idea of the learner resolving them through the role play scenarios. There's a book that I'm currently reading that I actually highly recommend. It's called The Instructional Story Design by Rance Green. And in it, he talks a lot about how stories are impactful for us because they invoke strong emotional reactions. And that's really what we're trying to go for. We want to come face to face with these emotional reactions and understand what the emotions are so that we can relate that information to whatever we come across a lot longer. We'll be able to retain it better than someone telling us. And stories are very effective in role play scenarios for that reason. They help us remember. Oh, fantastic. Rance has presented at TLDC before. Very cool. So Dungeons and Dragons is really engrossed in the idea of collaborative storytelling. People are working together in order to get towards a common outcome. And they include their different personalities and their different characters to help that story move forward. And roleplay is very similar. We want to encourage the development and these skills to grow stronger within our learners so that they can move the story forward as well. So we had our first scenario, which was go speak to the bartender in the bar, in the tavern. Here's another scenario. This follows Alice and Ella. Oh, I guess it's actually Mark. I apologize. It's Alice and Mark. So Alice has been working at the store for several years, and Mark is new to his role. Alice often tells Mark how things should be done, often without Mark asking for help. Mark feels that Alice is micromanaging him and feels frustrated because they're both in the same role. Mark approaches Alice about this, but Alice interprets his criticism and becomes defensive. She accuses Mark of not being grateful and resistant to learning. So, that right there is an example of utilizing scenarios to really build the stage for role play to function. And what we're looking for here is, remember, context, character, and conflict. We understand the context. It is Alice and Mark, not Alice and Ella. Or the context is that they're in this role. One of them is newer, one of them is older, and they are working at the same facility in the same position. The characters of Alice and Mark, with Alice being the senior store rep and Mark being new to his role, he feels like he's being micromanaged because Alice is offering him a lot of advice. And then the conflict is that interaction that they have with each other, the overall conflict that ensues. Now, I'm using scenarios very much like this in my leadership development course, in which we're presenting it so that people understand, based upon what happens in the store, they can reflect onto these and they can start to build that picture, that story in their mind. And they can start to first understand what's happening. And then, secondly, you can provide them with the skills to address it. So, in a situation like this, do you think you'd be able to come up with solutions for this? What do you think? Put in the chat if you think you know how to deal with a situation like this for Alice and Mark. I like that some of these options are focusing in on communication and boundaries. What we're really focusing in on here is, what can we do if we don't know the skills? We often revert back towards what we've learned in previous roles or what has worked in other situations, but not necessarily what are the rules or the regulations of your current role and your current organization. If you're newer to it, or you haven't run into something like this, you're always going to refer back towards your previous experience. And role play often encourages you to test that out. But a lot of times when you're using role play in a workplace setting, you really want, as the facilitator, to instruct the person on how to move forward. You want to give them the skills so that they understand what are their options. So when they come across a situation like this, they know how to deal with it. So let's say you're in this tavern and you're moving forward to the bartender. Um, in very bartender fashion, cleaning out the glass right next to the bar. And as you move forward, a rather large individual steps in front of you and starts to growl, looking down at you. No audible words, just kind of annoyance in his voice. How do you move past this blocker? And I'm going to put up another poll here for y'all. Let's see. Are you all able to see that? Let's put that on stage. Okay. Do you use charisma to try and talk your way out of this? Do you use intelligence to try and outsmart this blocker? Or do you try and sneak past or move gracefully by using dexterity? We'll give this a couple seconds for you to write in your response. All right. So let's hide that from the stage. It looks like a majority of people picked charisma. They want to know how to talk their way or smooth talk their way out of this situation with this blocker. Now, what are we doing here? When I tell you when I offer you these options, what are we trying to show? Yeah, that's a good one, Nicholas. That people approach problems in different ways. That's a really great point. That there is no one way to handle a situation. That's also an excellent point, Jason. Each path may have a right or wrong answer. Definitely. We want, because we're dealing with people and dealing with interactions, oftentimes with these human skills, we want them to be able to try different things. Often they're going to be doing it based on their previous experience, like we said, but they're also going to try novel ways of dealing with this. We want to encourage that because, again, this is a safe place to try that out. We are in the tavern. Nothing life threatening is going to happen in the tavern. So we want to encourage people to try this out, but we also want them to know what are the skills that they can practice. So for number two, know what you can do. When we play Dungeons and Dragons, we often have a character sheet that has all these different stats based upon abilities that we can do in certain scenarios. The stats are going to be related towards numbers that we can then add as modifiers to see if we can win or lose a social interaction. So we want to encourage when we're teaching others like conflict resolution, what are the skills that they can practice? We want to ensure that they first know the scenario because then they can get a foundation for it. And then, second, know what they can do. So, you teach these skills oftentimes through like a facilitation or through some pre learning, or maybe you present it to them in the moment. The second part of this is that you want to spot opportunities to use this. You want to ensure that the next scenario that they run into, they'll know those red flags and they'll know how to use their particular trainings, their learnings, in order to apply what skills that they learned in that scenario. So I think that this is where we start to veer away from the worry that we have to be voice actors or professional actors when we engage in role play. Really, like any skill, it comes down to the ability to practice certain things and utilize that in a situation. And that memorization and ability to implement it really makes people feel more comfortable because they now have a tool set at their disposal that they can utilize. They know what they can do, they know the rules of this interaction, and they know how to apply it. So, for Dungeons and Dragons, we have these character stats. If we're talking about conflict resolution, you need to teach them those skills so that they can apply it. Things like establishing rules when you're mediating, following up with people, brainstorming solutions, or agreeing on a solution together. Those are important. You can also, and this is something that I'm currently working on, is ask important questions. When you're coaching someone about conflict resolution, you often try to help them empathize with the other person. You ensure that they ask difficult questions because in those heated moments, we're very emotional, we're emotion driven. And so it's difficult to slow down and start thinking things through logically. Important questions can do that for a person. Like if I ask them, the other party, what the situation was, what would they say? Gives us an ability to see through someone else's perspective. How might you be contributing towards this conflict? Allows someone to self-reflect on their own part in this role. And what could you say to acknowledge the points of the other person? And that allows them to practice saying out loud how they could acknowledge someone else's points. These are all skills that you could deploy whenever dealing with conflict resolution, whether you're coaching or mediating. And it allows you to focus in on a lot of these skills that are going to be effective and giving them the tool set so they don't feel awkward in role play. They feel like they get to have a chance to use this skill and to run with it. So, how will the situation change? We were in the tavern. We walked up to the bartender. A big hulking character stepped in front of us, and we decided to use charisma to talk our way out of it. So for this one, let me see if I can do this. Can you all see my roll a d20 that is now on stage? Does that pop up for everyone? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Oh, negative, huh? Okay. Let me stop presenting and then I will share screen. And here we go. All right. Can y'all see that now? Perfect. All right. Let's go ahead and roll a d20 and see how successful we are with charisma. All right. It's not terrible. Let's say let's say that your stats are, a +5 because you're a very charismatic person. I would say that your modifiers of adding an extra 5 to your roll, making this a 16, are pretty good. You can now talk your way through the situation and you can move past that interaction. Maybe pat them on the arm and say, you know what? I ran into your mother at the bakery. Sounds like she has some words for you. And then the person's going to be like, oh, I forgot about my date with my mother. And then he runs off to go speak with her. And now you have full access to the bartender. Congratulations. All right, let's go back towards what we were talking about here. There we go. This one. All right. All right. So the third thing that we want to do is we want to provide opportunity. We want to encourage that people get opportunities to practice these skills. Like important questions, establishing boundaries, making sure that people use I speech when they're in like a mediation. We want to ensure that we give them tons of opportunities to practice this. So what we do is we offer more scenarios. We don't just start and stop with one. Because if people do feel awkward in those scenarios, it makes it so that's the only experience that they have. We want to give them more experience and more opportunities so that they can apply those skills in different scenarios. Then they start to notice the red flags and they'll be able to start and run with it themselves. One of the best feelings of being a DM is when you can sit back and you can start to see your players engaging with each other. And they're not just waiting for you to say something. They are starting to talk with each other and engage with each other. And you know that role play is happening at the table. That is a very satisfying feeling. And similarly, as someone who's teaching a skill like conflict resolution, you don't always want people to come towards the mediator. You want them to develop the skills so that they can utilize it in the moment and avoid conflict or deal with conflict in that present. That's important so that you're not always feeling like you're the one who is sharing the burden or carrying this heavy burden throughout the entire process. So offering scenarios, practicing, and then the last part here, evaluation and assessing. You want to ensure that there is some way to assess these skills, whether that is feedback from the other person. So you've got two people who are talking to each other. One of them is a coach, and they're the ones who are starting to, go through their points, their important questions, their guidelines. And then you have the other person sitting across from them who's taking note, who's giving feedback back to them based upon the skills that you've learned. Maybe they forgot something, or maybe they didn't touch on it specifically in the way that they were taught. That's a great way to get in the moment feedback to understand, how am I going to improve from this? And that practice and offering different scenarios is all about improvement. We want to ensure that people will have the ability, that they know the red flags and that they'll know what to do when the next time comes up. So making sure that people are comfortable, making sure that they're able to move past this sense of discomfort with these new skills is really what we're trying to provide for them. All right. And that's it. That's me. So you can always connect with me if you'd like to learn more. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a website that I included in that Google Drive as well. And I would love just to get in touch with you and talk about nerdy stuff. Have a virtual coffee if you'd like to. Thank you for noticing, Nadia, my over the garden wall cosplay. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions? I know I came up a little early on this one, but I can definitely answer any questions that you currently have.
Taking a look. Any questions? Okay, there you go.
Nicholas, do you have any advice for involving feedback in professional development setting implementing this approach? Yeah, that's a great question. So, are you referring to like feedback from the role players with each other or as the facilitator offering? Okay, yeah. So, in that situation, I unfortunately can't share my resources because they're under propriety for an organization that we're using. We're using an organization called DDI for our leadership development. But one of the things that they do in that is they provide a coaching checklist. And it covers a lot of things. First off, the way that they call it is addressing the needs of the head and addressing the needs of the heart. So they focus in on empathy, sharing, listening for all those heart needs. And then for the head, it talks about being able to establish what is the conflict, being able to address it, being able to come up with some sort of call to action. So it follows these two arcing pathways that tend to complement each other. And they have it in a neat little kind of like journal for the person to hold on to, so that when they write in at the different stages of communication what they are trying to say to the other person, they can make sure that what they are saying is also hitting those needs of the heart. So am I saying this in a way that is empathetic? Am I saying this in a way that shows that I am listening to the other person and I am engaging with them? So having a checklist like that you can provide for the person who isn't speaking, will give them a chance to look over that, and as they're listening they can pull out what the person said that was effective and what the things that they need to kind of work on a little bit. So that's a great way in order to give them the skills, because they may not be a professional at that point in those skills. It gives them the opportunity to apply it immediately in their feedback. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Let's see.
Did you see that one from Vanessa?
I don't think so. Oh, here we go. How do you adapt your scenarios to people who might be neurodivergent or have other communication challenges? That's a great question, Vanessa. So currently, we are having a DEIB training that we're going to be starting. That one's going to focus in a lot about accessibility needs, focusing a lot about a sense of belongingness, ensuring that people are not an afterthought, that they are worked into the foundation, this idea of universal design. And I unfortunately don't have the tools to go into how to effectively role play those conversations right now, but I would love to connect with you. And then as I go throughout my journey, I'll definitely share it with you.
Love it. Okay, taking a look to see anything else.
Again, make sure that you look onto the that Google Drive on the very top. Maybe I can drop it in one more time if you didn't get it previously. Those have a lot of the resources that I talked about. It has a lot of just opportunities for development and for your own research. And then I'm going to plug myself a little bit here. Hold on a second. Let me pull this over. There is actually, if you are interested in D&D, there is a course that I made about finding out your character. It is an e-learning tutorial for playing Dungeons and Dragons. And in it, you can outfit your character, figure out what your class is, really look into what your needs are and what is Dungeons and Dragons, and then be able to figure out like how you fit into a party and what you do. So that's in there as well. So if you just want to go in there, I'm like, where else am I going to share this? Right? This is the place that I have to share this. This very niche micro learning or e-learning.
That's great. That's great. So you started playing D&D 4 years ago, Russell?
No, I started playing like 6 years ago, but I started
Okay.
DMing about 4 years ago.
Okay. Okay. What got you into it?
Oh, great question. So I was really impressed by how my DM handled things and was able to kind of like spin all those plates at once. So I think that he set a really great foundation, and it got to the point where I wanted to start trying it myself. You know, it was kind of scary, kind of challenging, but I feel like most things in life that are scary are worth, overcoming, or worth trying to look into deeper. So I took on that responsibility, and I've loved it ever since. It is fantastic.
That's great. But how about Dungeons and Dragons altogether? What was your experience getting into the game?
Yeah, so that was the only game that we played. We didn't really try out any other TTRPGs, but recently I started. So I actually got to be the game master for a conference in my local town. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and every spooky season they have a scare fest that happens where a lot of nerds just get together at this really haunted looking conference venue, and we all play scary games together. And oh, hi Jennifer, my neighbor. And it was really cool. I got to run this game called 10 Candles, which is so much fun. It's so scary too, because you
Uh-oh.
play in complete darkness and you have 10 tea light candles in front of you, and every time someone fails in something that they want to do, you snuff out one of those candles and it gets
Yeah.
darker and darker. And it's a great way to set that visceral kind of terrifying mood.
Yeah, I was waiting for Dawn to pipe in on that one because she has mentioned 10 candles to me a few times. That's awesome. That's great.
it
That
was
would
it
be
was super cool. I had a lot of fun, and I actually got this let's see if I got this like little lantern that I could use as the last candle. So it has a little like, it's pretty cool.
that is great. That's great. Could you do 10 candles virtually?
You might be able to, but there is an element of kind of being around the same table in the darkness that I think really benefits from like in person. And there's also, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but there's another element to it that has to do with recording that is very impactful. And I think that if you can't record online, you would be missing out on like a very, very suspenseful moment.
Love it. Okay. All right. This is great.
Yeah, I
I
would
love
love to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to talk about more nerdy stuff and potentially get an online L&D game going.
I know. Hey, I have the space for it. I have this platform, I have other stuff, and just even talking earlier with Keegan and John's session and the overlap of community and being able to play games like this, I'm starting to think, because that's the whole thing, building community. Like you just need to have people, you need to have things that a community will want to gather around for, right?
Mm,
And I heard that when I was in Las Vegas, just other people that were challenged with building communities, just like how are you able to do this and we weren't able to do it? And it's like, well, it's because I like to bring people together to do something interesting, and so games can be a part of that, and I'm totally down for it because I'm a D&D nerd too. I've been playing like since I was 12 years old. So yeah, it's a
yeah.
long time.
That collaborative storytelling, I feel like, is something that we really desire in our life, and it's difficult to get sometimes. But when you get to do it at the table, it just feels so satisfying. Yeah, so absolutely down. And yeah, thanks for putting this on, Luis. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm psyched. I feel a little guilty because I've had so much fun doing it. Not usually like, I don't get taken over as much as I have with this one, but it's been really, really great.
Before I sign off, do you all want to see this mini that I had painted that I spent way too much money on?
Bring it on. Let's check it out.
Hold on a second.
Oh boy, this is exactly what this event is for. This kind of stuff. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
I know.
You said mini.
I don't tell my wife how much I actually spent on this. But I am correct, William. I am currently in Rise of Tiamat as our last campaign right now, and I wanted to go out with a bang,
Wow. Can you turn off the share?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry.
So that we can see that. That's amazing. Look at that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I feel even bad just holding it right now because I'm all like, something's going to happen.
No, thank you for sharing that with us.
I need to.
All right. Well, that is Mariana. What's the AC on that? What a great way to end a session, showing off your miniature.
Family heirloom. You are correct, Kim.
This is great. All right, everybody. So we've got one more session left for today. I think my voice will be able to hang in. If you don't know Jonathan Rock, J Rock, we call him. He has been around TLDC for a few years now. I don't know if he's in the audience. Hopefully not, but he's one of the most entertaining people I have ever met, period. And so from Gagne to Gygax, I just am psyched that he's going to be talking about what the roots of the D&D hobby can teach us about e-learning, design, and dev. And he is a masterful designer and developer. He is an articulate storyline expert. He has built so many just games and just interesting things. And so I am really looking forward to ending the day with seeing J Rock do his thing. He's not somebody I usually like in the audience because he is so distracting with the comments that he makes. There's always just so funny and incredible. But here he is speaking for us. So please return. That's 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And so hopefully we'll see you then. Russell, thanks again. It was great meeting you last week. And we'll see everybody in the next one, hopefully.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye all.